Welcome to the Compliance Experts podcast, hosted by Vartan Consultancy. Miles Vartan and his guests, as experts in compliance and risk management, will guide you carefully and with clarity through the many sectors of compliance like health and safety, ISO and operator licenses, and the complexity of customs regulations. They'll also be talking about the latest legislation, global trade news, and the hot topics as they happen.
Hello everybody and welcome to Compliance Experts and our first edition, but we hope it's going to bring a better understanding of managing risk and how, if we can improve it, we can help you improve your business. So the music you heard is different to that we're listening to frequently on the television at the moment, following England's victories at football, and let's hope that they carry on and bring home the cup. My name is Miles Vartan. I set the business up, Vartan Consultancy, about 12 years ago with the vision to give people a one-stop shop to help them manage their risk. Soon after setting up the business and knowing Neil very well, Neil, why don't you give everybody a couple of seconds on your background?
Yes, of course, Miles. Hello to everybody listening. As Miles said, my name is Neil Bird. I joined Vartan Consultancy in 2016. My background has been in the freight forwarding and logistics industry, centred around the ports of Felixstowe and Ipswich, and within that a particular focus on customs clearance procedures and processes, usually based on customs clearance on cargo from non-EU origins, but of course now that has to encompass customs declarations for EU goods as well.
That's brilliant, Neil. And without giving anything away, you predated us going into the EU, didn't you?
I am that old, Miles. Yes, yeah. I do remember. I do remember when we used to do customs declarations on EU goods back in the 1980s, prior to the creation of the single market in 1992.
And you've worked for a manufacturer as well as a couple of hauliers, as I know.
I did. I was the customs compliance and logistics manager for a forklift truck manufacturer, and that was my role prior to joining you.
Excellent. So, when we were starting to think about how we could help people in terms of understanding quite often the maze that you have to work your way through to find a solution to managing risk effectively, we thought that our job would be to demystify compliance and challenge it head on and help your business embrace it. We want you to be able to use it as a tool to improve your business and your overall company performance. And for many of you, compliance is not going to be your core business, or certainly it's not on the radar every morning when you come in. It's all about sales. It's all about beating the competition. It's about being the best employer ever, and making sure that you go home on a Friday with a steady mind and look forward to time with your family. So it's all about, really, we want to help you to go to work to enjoy the rest of your life, but don't come to work and worry about everything. So we're hoping that this will help you understand risk a bit better. We want to take the pain out of it. We're skilled at helping people understand risk. We've addressed many scenarios in our time across the whole risk management matrix. We understand how to talk to many of the regulatory authorities that you and us will be faced with, from everybody from HMRC to the Health and Safety Executive to DEFRA to the British Retail Consortium if you're handling food. We've devised processes to follow and training to match. So we're going to try and use this podcast to bring in experts from outside. We'll put you in touch with customers. We'll bring in category specialists who could maybe going to help us on welfare, on mental health, on how keeping fit is going to help you at work, and many other aspects of working with countries outside the UK. Neil, in terms of some of our key customers who we've worked with over the last year, it's been a mixture, hasn't it, of us going to them and suggesting that they look at maybe solutions such as customs warehousing, where you can hold goods and duty suspense, to raising transit notes so that you can get the vehicles across the border into the EU without too much problem. For you, what is one of the biggest problems that we have been able to help customers with and sort of educate them on the problems?
I think the biggest challenge that we've faced so far this year, Miles, has been helping our clients, particularly our direct importer clients, to understand what the trade and cooperation agreement actually meant to them. By the trade and cooperation agreement, I mean the free trade agreement that was finally agreed at the 11th hour on Christmas Eve last year. And within the trade and cooperation agreement, it talks about something called product-specific rules, which are designed to determine the origin of goods. And I think the hardest thing that people have had to come to terms with is that when we were in the EU, third country imports, came into the UK with duty paid in the UK, but that process then placed them in free circulation within the EU. And that allowed those goods then to be re-exported into EU countries without any further customs intervention. What we're faced with this year is the fact that as the UK is no longer in the EU, those goods are dutiable both into the UK, but then also they are dutiable if they move into the EU. Which is clearly a very different scenario to what people were used to dealing with last year. So that double duty impact has obviously had a very serious effect on people's ability to then trade those goods with their EU customers.
Because they become uncompetitive price-wise.
Correct, and it means that what we're faced with is a situation where using the UK as a distribution hub for Europe becomes more difficult and requires significantly more paperwork than it had done previously. So we've worked with those importers to help them establish, as you mentioned earlier, as you alluded to earlier, customs warehouses, which allows them to import those third country goods without payment of the customs charges until such point as they decide on removal from the warehouse where the goods are going to go to. Mm-hmm. So if the goods at that stage are then exported into the EU, the UK duty charges never become payable. The customers in the EU will still have to pay duty based on whatever rates of duty exist between the EU and the origin country, but the importer in the UK avoids the cost of the double duty situation.
So before we got to the end of last year, am I right in remembering, and I think I'm correct, in that was the third cliff face that we faced, wasn't it? So originally it was going to be the 1st of May, and then it was put back. Was it the 1st of October? Then it went back to the 1st of May, 1st of October, 31st of December. There were three sort of stuttered starts, weren't there? Three
deadlines, 2 of which we missed, didn't we? Which I think was originally March 2019, and then as you said, I think October, and then finally it was we departed on the 1st of January.
And I think we're in agreement, aren't we, that at no stage did really the trade community, as we call them, did they really get easy to understand, clear instructions from government as to what they needed to do to be ready for leaving the EU.
Yeah, I think that was challenging for importers. I think the timing was also difficult as well. There's some argument that the government perhaps should not have been seeking to enforce the end of transition as being the 31st of December. As we're aware, the government have decided to have a phased implementation of import controls, which suggests that they felt that businesses were not ready for import controls on the 1st of January. So perhaps there is possibly an argument that the transition period should have been extended, which would have allowed people more time to understand the trade and cooperation agreement and be in a better position to deal with the imposition of import controls on EU cargo. But that sort of led us to this rather peculiar limbo state we have at the moment, where importers can opt to use delayed declarations on goods from the EU, which effectively means that they're allowed up to 6 months to provide the customs declaration for goods they import from the EU, which has provided its own challenges as well.
So rather than possibly being so obsessed with getting it done, might the government have been better in terms of engaging more fully with the business community and importers and exporters in general so that they had an input on how things were going to be set up for, as we approach these various deadlines.
I think that's a very valid argument, and there were a lot of trade associations that represent freight forwarders and customs brokers, such as UCWA, the UK Warehousing Association, BIFA, the British International Freight Association, who all approached the government and tried to explain the predicament that the logistics and customs clearance industry were facing. There is a serious lack of qualified import clerks to do all these additional customs declarations that need to be done, and the trade associations repeatedly delivered that message to the government, but for whatever reason, still continued to go for as you said, the attitude that they would get Brexit done. And I think we're yet to see the worst of Brexit in terms of import controls, because the date for full import customs declarations on all arrivals from the EU into the UK has been pushed back to the 1st of January 2022. Yeah. And I think that's a really significant deadline. And when we talk about risk, I think that date it bears significant risk to importers, because if people are not prepared and haven't done adequate preparation to have their customs declarations done, there's a serious risk of delays to import cargo from that date onwards.
Okay, so we're enjoying ourselves way too much talking about international trade, and we are going to focus on this in our next podcast. But thank you, Neil, on that. I think that's it's given a good understanding of the complexity of what you're faced with when you have to start having to comply and to make sure that you are adhering to regulations. So these people in the international trade, or our customers who are listening, employ many people. They have warehouses which they've got to manage in a profitable way, where it's all about sustainability of employment. So during these difficult times, with as people come off furlough, and we're battling with the pandemic, trying to squash the surprises which come out of the business or out of the business world. We feel, as Vartan Consultancy, we can help you focus on your core business and help you not get distracted by aspects of your business that could go wrong. We've touched on a couple of subjects there and topics where we've sort of outlined who needs to understand about risk management. Let me try and give you an example of how, in terms of health and safety, and the Health and Safety Work Act, and as a qualified risk assessor and someone who's going to help you with your health and safety, try and explain it to customers. So what we try and do is eliminate risk. We try and find the causes of what can make things go wrong, and we try to eliminate those causes. Now, it's not always possible to totally eliminate the causes. So what we find in terms of helping businesses is, if we can help you train your staff to be aware of the various aspects of regulations and processes which they're having to adhere to, how to follow these processes in quite a lot of detail. So we provide the training. We then provide, we can be literally on the end of the phone 5 days a week within normal working hours, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can if you call over the weekend. We're here to be a sort of like an extra lung to your business, an extra angle where you can come and get some advice, knowing that it could well be saving you some time, and then develop a relationship with us so that we can fully understand what further problems that you may need, and you can come to us about any problems of at all. In terms of risk management, we would like to help you understand the subject and how you can address risk, improve your business. The conventional way is to almost have a bit of a brainstorm and identify the aspects or incidents or issues that could cause you a problem. Then we will help you understand where you are with your business in terms of countering those problems. Could those countermeasures be improved and thereby reduce the risk? And who is going to monitor and manage each situation so that you don't go backwards, so that the process of managing risk will be an iterative improvement. It will be all about continual improvement. Many times we would encourage, and we see business owners involve their workforce. So worker participation is increasingly being seen as a way of driving risk issues down and improving performance. And quite often, you can, if you're trying to get people involved, if they know that by looking after themselves, looking after their colleagues, and reducing the chance of something going wrong, it's going to improve the performance of the business, and thereby people's job prospects will be maintained, working hours can be contained, processes get completed correctly first time, and equipment that you're using, it's going to be safe to use. So in the haulage industry, for example, the traffic commissioner will often ask those in front of him in a public inquiry where you don't want to go, what is the most important document in terms of maintaining a safe fleet? And everybody has to, in chorus, say to him, the defect report, sir. And so on a daily basis, before a driver uses the vehicle, he'll do a 15-minute defect report, go around his vehicle, check that the lights work, the brakes work, nothing's going to fall off the vehicle as he's driving along, that his load is secure, his tyres are in legal condition, and that he's not going to be losing any brake fluid, for example. And that way, he's going a long way to eliminating the risk. So in terms of risk management, we are trying to help our clients understand about addressing all those issues in whatever field they work in. So if we went into international trade, we're going to need to know what are the problems that could hold up your vehicle or your consignment at the airport when it's delivered for an export. If it's coming the other way into the country, what are the issues that could stop you from getting on that ferry? That's a sort of a good sort of a picture as to what we're trying to do. Neil, in terms of, I'm just trying to reach out in terms of maybe the client we've got who all of a sudden realised he was bringing motorcycles in from Japan, had spent quite a lot of money in building a warehouse, and all of a sudden was faced with the problem of being able to sell her bikes into Japan without incurring too much duty. Could you expand upon that a bit, do you think?
Yeah, so again, this was really Brexit related, and the problem she faced was the bikes actually originate in China. They're manufactured in China, so paid duty on the product into the UK. It's a dutiable product on import into the UK, but she has a very thriving market in the EU. A lot of the bikes actually get sold into Spain and Portugal, particularly. Caroline was faced with the problem then of paying duty on import into the UK, but of course the bike is still of Chinese origin, so she was finding that the shipments into Europe were then being charged duty again on import to her customers in the EU. So she asked us to try and find a solution for her, and that solution turned out to be the most effective solution turned out to be customs warehousing. So we worked with Caroline to implement that for her, and then following on from successful authorization to operate as a customs warehouse, we've also now been assisting her with the customs clearance requirements for exporting the goods to Spain and Portugal, which of course is something that she'd not previously had to face. So there are risks all the way through that supply chain for her, risks that we've helped her to mitigate to a certain extent.
So in that particular example, was the information that she needed and the solutions she needed, were they readily available to her, or easily accessible, easy to find? Why did she ring? Had to reach out to someone else to help her with that?
I think she knew of the concept of customs warehousing, but I think it's true of a lot of our customers that they know of these concepts or these customs authorizations, but I think most people would agree trying to navigate gov.uk website and knowing where to go to get the finer detail of what you're going to need to achieve these accreditations is very, very difficult. And I think that's where, and there's a risk in that in itself, Miles, in that if you get it wrong, your application is going to be rejected, and you're not going to get the accreditation that your business desperately needs.
Exactly.
So we can take that risk away by making sure that we present customers with a robust application in the first instance.
Yeah, and she, like us, employ people who come to work, and we want people coming to work, especially in these difficult times, being able to apply themselves. In Caroline's case, it will be making sure that she has enough people on board all the time to unload containers, get them into the warehouse, maybe, I think possibly, in her case, maybe put some components onto the bike, finish them off before she can re-export them. What we're finding and talking to listeners now is that quite often line managers don't talk to their staff. And with the pandemic and a lot of people working from home, a lot of people feel isolated. They feel under quite a lot of mental stress in terms of how can I work from home effectively? What's going to happen when I go back to work? Will my job be the same? I think I'm finding that people are wanting advice in terms of how can they make their workplace safe? What should they be doing to look after people's welfare and mental health? We're just looking to renew our company's private healthcare arrangements and looking at a scheme where exercise and eating well, sleeping well, looking after yourself physically all contributes to getting you effectively benefits that will help you further improve your health, like membership at gyms and this type of thing. So I think during the course of these podcasts, we'll be looking at all aspects of the physical movement of goods, but right through to how you look after your staff. Because if you can protect your people and your assets and your business, then that's going to help you in terms of risk management. And then I think, better understanding of it will then mushroom, and you find yourself talking about it to your peers and colleagues in the trade. It gets reported on television, you read about it in trade magazines, and we would encourage people to be as disruptive as possible. Don't accept the norm. Your employees and they come to work to help your business develop, and it's very important that in all aspects you're looking after them. Quite often we're finding now that people are given KPIs where you have to, some of the KPIs are actually making sure that you have at least X number of conversations with your staff each month, and it's not to do with work. So that you get a good understanding of the pressures that they're under, because a lot of things happen outside work. You need people to perform when they're working for your business. So we'll be looking, and we'll be encouraging people to give it a look widely at the whole aspect of managing this situation. So in our next episode, we're going to talk in depth about the new Brexit import and export regulations and the light at the end of the tunnel, which is rapidly approaching us in terms of what that could mean to many of us listening to this podcast. I think I could, in terms of an analogy, Neil, I could look at a train coming at us at full speed down the tunnel, or maybe it's going to be a ferry as we're approaching the other side of the channel. But what would you think, Neil, would be some of the key things that people would need to think about, which we will expand upon in the next episode? But what would be the key features in terms of getting ready for the 1st of January?
There's an earlier deadline we have to think about as well, Miles, which is that on the 1st of October this year, Port Health and the APHA, the Animal and Plant Health Authority, will start doing sanitary and phytosanitary checks on product of animal origin and plant products and various food products that are entering the UK from the EU. So that if our listeners are involved in the food industry, that's a significant deadline that they will need to prepare for. And clearly, as you said, on the 1st of January 2022, you are going to need to make sure you either have a third party who is fully up to speed in terms of your customs clearance requirements and will be able to act on your behalf, or alternatively, you are going to have to tackle that yourselves, which may require some training in customs procedures and rules and regulations. And there is, of course, a very significant risk to your business if you get those rules and regulations wrong.
Wrong, exactly. So, as we know, Lord Frost, who was the hassled and harried. Sorry, Neil.
He was our negotiator, wasn't he?
He was the hassled and harried negotiator who we saw rushing in and out of buildings in Brussels. Is in the driving seat on getting ready for the 1st of January. But you probably, for those listeners who are paying attention to what's going on, will see that the detail, for example, with the Northern Ireland Protocol changes daily. So I think it's important that companies like ours, but especially Vartan Consultancy, keep up to speed with exactly what's going on, the latest developments, and we'll bring them to you in more detail in episode 2, and it will be the latest contemporary news with the best results. So thank you very much, Neil, for all your help on our initial podcast. So for those who are listening, we would like you to join in. Obviously, you're on mute now. You're listening to us via a podcast. We would welcome your questions, your problems, and your views on compliance. So please reach out to us. Have your say. We're spread across most social media channels. You can come to our website, vartanconsultancy.com, or via our LinkedIn page and Twitter. We'll often respond to you there and then when you send us messages or questions. And if you'd like to suggest further issues or aspects you'd like us to include in our next podcast, which will be focused on the EU, then we'd be very interested in hearing from you and would welcome your opinions. So thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Miles.
Thank you to all our listeners, and look forward to taking you all on our podcast journey. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Compliance Experts podcast. We highly value your input and welcome any questions, thoughts or challenges for us to tackle in forthcoming episodes. Vartan Consultancy pride themselves in helping customers manage risk and subsequently helping them improve their overall company performance. To speak to Miles and his team, visit vartanconsultancy.com. This podcast is produced and managed by podtalk.co.uk and is the copyright of Vartan Consultancy. This podcast is created for entertainment purposes only. Views and opinions are that of Vartan Consultancy and their guests. Information recorded in this episode was deemed correct at the time of recording. However, we advise you to always check with Vartan Consultancy for up-to-date information and legislation.